Hello and a very good day to all of you watching this video. I am Dr. Gauthami and welcome back to Homeo Vision, the YouTube channel. In today's video of Organon of Medicine, we will be learning aphorism number 17. Now, before reading the aphorism proper, I would like to give you a brief description or an introduction about this aphorism. So, in this video, as discussed, we are learning aphorism number 17. Now, in aphorism number 17, there is the aphorism proper, and then we have footnote 1 and footnote 2. Again, both of these footnotes are very important from your UG board exam perspective as well as for the AIAPGET MCQs. Now, in aphorism number 17, Hahnemann talks about the highest and the sole aim of the physician. Not just this, he also uses the phrase true object of the mission. So these are the two important phrases that we will be coming across in aphorism number 17. Apart from that, he also restates the concept that we have already learned in the previous aphorisms, which is removal of the perceptible S&S, that is signs and symptoms, is equal to the removal or the annihilation of the disease. So he says the moment we remove the signs and symptoms of the disease that is perceptible to us, that equals to the removal of the disease that is also equal now that is also equal to the um, change in the derangement of the internal vital force. So the moment we remove the external signs and symptoms which we can perceive from the outside, it also equals to the removal of the internal disease. This will also bring about a change in the vital force which was deranged. So it also brings about an internal change. Even the internal change is going to be rectified. Now, this is what Hahnemann reiterates in the 17th aphorism. In footnote number 1, we talk about a very important concept, which is moral remedy. And in the footnote number 2, to aphorism number 17, we talk about, Hahnemann talks about the preserver of mankind. Now, who is the preserver of mankind? It is the God. And he says, God being the preserver of the mankind or being the preserver of human life, he shows the physician what is to be cured in the disease. So God is directly leading us to the cure of the disease by showing us the external perceptible signs and symptoms. So it is God who is showing to us the perceptible external signs and symptoms so that us as physicians, we can simply observe, make a note of the external perceptible signs and symptoms, and bring about a cure in the suffering mankind. So this is footnote number 2. Now let us read the aphorisms line by line and understand them. Okay, now this is aphorism number 17 for all of you. Let us read it. Now, as in the cure effected by the removal of the whole of the perceptible signs and symptoms of the disease, the internal alteration of the vital force to which the disease is due. Consequently, the whole of the disease is at the same time removed. Let me stop here and explain. So you can see at this point there is a reference to footnote number 1 where we will be discussing about the moral remedy as well as the power of mind on the body. Okay, now before that, this first sentence. So as discussed in the previous slide, he says that the removal of the totality of the symptoms, that is nothing but removal of the whole of the perceptible signs and symptoms of the disease. This leads to the annihilation or the removal of the entire disease per se. So for us, what is the disease? What is disease for us as homeopaths? Disease is nothing but the internal derangement of the vital force. Correct? Internal derangement of the vital force. So removal of the disease means we are bringing about a change or we are rectifying the internal derangement of the vital force. How? By removing the totality of the symptoms. So that is what he says. So the disease which was caused due to an alteration or internal derangement of the vital force, this is also removed or this is also annihilated when we remove the whole of the perceptible signs and symptoms. That is nothing but the totality of symptoms. TOS. Let us continue. It follows that the physician has only to remove the whole of the symptoms in order at the same to abrogate and annihilate the internal change. So he says, Hahnemann says that in order to bring about a cure, there is only one thing that the physician has to do. And the one thing that the physician has to do is to remove the whole of the symptoms. Okay, that is to remove the whole of the perceptible signs and symptoms or the totality of the symptoms in order to abrogate and annihilate, that is in order to destroy, okay, the internal change, that is to say the morbid derangement of the vital force. So what is this internal change? This internal change is nothing but the derangement, morbid derangement of the vital force, consequently the totality of the disease. So if you are rectifying or if you are um, trying to bring about a change in the derangement of the vital force, or if you're trying to annihilate the derangement of the vital force, that is equal to the totality of the disease being removed. That is, the disease itself is going to get removed if you try to rectify the internal change. And we can bring about a change in the derangement of the vital force just by focusing on the totality of the symptoms and removing the totality of the symptoms or the perceptible signs and symptoms. But when the disease is annihilated, the health is restored. And this is the highest, the sole aim of the physician. So he says, when this disease is annihilated and when the health is restored, he says, this is what is the highest and the sole aim of the physician. Okay. So this is something that we have to learn. Now, there is a small continuation to this aphorism, which, as you can see, is missed in this slide. So I will just write it down and then explain it to you. So the continuation goes from here. But when the disease is annihilated and the health restored, and this is the highest, the sole aim of the physician. Continuing, who knows the true object of his mission. Again, this phrase is very important. Who knows the true object of the mission? And what is this? Which consists not in learned sounding prating, but in giving aid to the sick. So this is the continuation of aphorism number 17. So here he says, first thing is that the highest and the sole aim of the physician is to bring about a cure in the suffering, and that is by removing the whole of the perceptible signs and symptoms. We in turn rectify the internal derangement of the vital force and thereby remove or annihilate the disease itself, and health is restored. This is the highest and the sole aim of the physician, and also the true object of the physician's mission is not in the learned sounding prating. Okay, it is not in boasting all your knowledge. It is not by just sounding learned, but his true object of the mission is to help the sick, is to give aid to the sick. And how can he give aid to the sick? By bringing about a relief in his suffering or by curing the mankind of his disease. Now, this is aphorism number 17 proper. Now, going ahead, we have the footnote number 1 to aphorism number 17. Now let me read this out. So, like I told you earlier, now this footnote number uh, emphasizes on the power of mind and thoughts. It is the power of mind and thoughts to cause and cure diseases. This is here we are talking about something what we can all in this generation call as manifesting. Okay, so the more you think about it, the more it happens. So if you are thinking a lot about an approaching death, or if you get a very strong dream or a serious dream where the patient may feel that he will die, okay, it is possible that the power of mind is so strong that it is possible that at the expected hour he might start getting symptoms of an approaching death. So, this is the power of mind that Hahnemann is trying to explain to us in aphorism number 17. He says sometimes a warning dream, a superstitious fancy, or a solemn prediction, so a very strong thought or a very strong belief in the mind that a person might die or that he himself might die, okay, might die. So the patient sometimes may feel that he will die at a certain hour on a certain day, and that is the kind of strong belief that he has in mind. So once this happens, it truly can happen that at the predicted or the expected hour or on the expected day, the patient will start uh, experiencing the symptoms of an approaching death. So he says, now the cause of this type of a disease or the cause of these type of symptoms are because of the mind. It is the thought. Okay, it is the morality that is being affected. It is the emotional state or it is the belief of the mind which has led to the development of these kind of symptoms. So in such cases where the mind is the cause of the disease, okay, in such cases where the mind is the cause of the disease, what will be the solution for symptoms like these or for diseases by it? It is just through moral remedy, what we say. So he says, Hahnemann says, but this type of a thought or this type of a predilection we can change, but we can change his belief by changing his mind about it, by assurance. Okay, so this is what he is indirectly telling us. Through assurance and by trying to bring about a change in his thought process, we can bring about a cure in the type of symptoms that he experiences or that he has been experiencing. So, this is what Hahnemann tells us in aphorism number 17, footnote number 1, where he talks about the power of mind. Sometimes a very strong thought has the power to bring about a certain type of symptoms, okay, or to bring about or to develop a certain type of a disease. And for these types of diseases, again, counseling, change in the thought process, and assurance can bring about a lot of change physically also. Now, let me read this. A warning dream, a superstitious fancy, or a solemn predilection, sorry, or a solemn prediction that death would occur at a certain day or at a certain hour has not unfrequently produced all the signs of commencing and increasing disease, of approaching death itself at the hour announced. So he says sometimes a warning dream, a superstitious fancy, or a solemn prediction. Okay, sometimes will you will see that at the expected hour or on the expected day, you will find the symptoms of approaching death getting developed in that particular patient, which could not happen without the simultaneous production of the inward change. So here he's saying the power of mind or the power of thought is actually bringing about an internal rearrangement in the vital force, which is responsible for developing the type of symptoms that we will be seeing after the change in the thought process, which could not happen without the simultaneous production of the inward state corresponding to the state observed externally. Okay, so the inward change is absolutely in sync with the external manifestation of the symptoms that we are able to see. And hence, in all such cases, the morbid signs indicative of approaching death have frequently been dissipated by an identical cause, by some cunning deception of persuasion to a belief in the contrary, and health suddenly restored. So, in cases where the mind is producing symptoms like this, he says the cure is also in the mind itself. Okay, by persuading them to believe in the contrary, meaning by reassuring them that you will not die, nothing is going to happen to you. Okay, by bringing about a belief in them contrary to the state that is being manifested, we can bring about a change in that entire physic as well as the mind, and health is suddenly restored. So we can see that by counseling, by reassurance, by making them believe in the contrary, we will be able to see that the health will be restored, which could not have happened without the removal by means of this moral remedy of the internal and external morbid change that threatened death. So he says again, by all of this persuasion, by all of this assurance, reassurance, and by all of this counseling, what we do, we again bring about a change in the internal derangement. We again try to rectify the internal derangement of the vital force, and thereby the health is going to be restored. So he says the power of mind. So the mind also has a lot of power in bringing about the derangement as well as in maintaining the harmony of the vital force, which respectively will produce a disease and state of health. So this is aphorism number 17. Now, sorry, aphorism number 17, footnote 1. Now let us have a look at aphorism number 17, footnote 2. So here the most important thing that we have to learn here is that the God is the preserver of mankind, and God himself shows the physician what is to be cured in the disease. Okay, God, who is the preserver of mankind, could reveal. That is, see, the first sentence itself tells you everything. It is only thus that God, the preserver of mankind, could reveal. So it is only this, it is only the totality of the symptoms that the God can reveal to us. Everything else is happening in the internal and everything else is hidden. And it might as well be not relieved to the physician. So he says the only thing that God reveals to the physician is the totality of the symptoms, and is the only these are the only signs and symptoms that the physician is supposed to take into consideration and bring about a cure in the suffering mankind. So it is only thus that God, the preserver of mankind, could really reveal his wisdom and goodness in reference to the cure of the disease, to which man is liable here below, by showing to the physician what he has to remove in diseases in order to annihilate them and thus re-establish health. So he says God is the one who is showing to us, who is showing to the physician what he has to remove in disease in order to bring about a cure. But what would we think of his wisdom and goodness if he had shrouded in mysterious obscurity that which has to be cured in diseases, as is asserted by dominant school of medicine, which affects to possess a supernatural insight into the inner nature of things and shut it up in the hidden interior, and thus render it impossible for man to know the melody accurately, um, consequently impossible for him to cure. Okay, so he says, um, God, being wise and being the preserver of mankind, he has shown us what is to be cured in the disease by showing to us the external manifestations of the disease through signs and symptoms. Okay, but what would we think of God if he had hidden all of this in the interior, as the old school believes? So the old school believes that the cause of the disease is hidden in the interior and it is something that we cannot see, and unless and until we cannot see it, we cannot cure the disease. We cannot cure the disease properly, is what the old school asserts. But we know that as homeopaths, these external manifestations, these externally perceptible signs and symptoms, is something that God is showing to us through which we can think about a cure. Okay, and it is never whatever is required for the physician to know in order to cure a disease is being completely shown to us by God through these perceptible signs and symptoms. Okay, he says God has not hidden anything in the interior of the organism. Okay, whatever is needed for the physician to cure the sick is being shown by God externally already. Okay, and whatever else is being hidden inside the interior of an organism for a particular reason. And let us not dig into that. Okay, so this is what he says. So the gist of this particular footnote is that we have the preserver of mankind, who is God, and he's wise enough, and he is conveniently showing to all the physicians what is to be cured in a disease through the externally perceptible signs and symptoms which are being manifested by the sick. Okay, So this is the footnote 2 to aphorism number 17. So with this, we are coming to an end of the explanation of aphorism number 17. In the next video, we will discuss about aphorism number 18 and 19 together. So until then, go through this aphorism once again and go through all the previous aphorisms. Thank you.